Hi everyone, welcome to MMA The Beginning, where we talk about the early days of MMA. My guest this week, I'm so delighted to have. He's the Icon Sport middleweight champion. He's a UFC Hall of Famer. He's an MMA legend. He's a colour commentator. He's a referee. He's a stuntman. Do you know what? There's no end to this man's talents. Frank Trigg, how are you, sir?
Good, Danny. I'm doing really well. Yeah, how you guys holding up over there?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. How's things in the States?
You know, it's funny. You remember about 10 or 15 years ago when people like podcasts are going to be stupid, no one's going to pay attention, like who cares about these things? And all of a sudden now, if you're watching like the BBC or you're watching CNN or you're watching Fox News, everybody's home doing a podcast. Like even the top, like everyone's just at home. This is what it is. So like we were kind of on the forefront in the beginning. So it's kind of funny to see how the world is actually wrapped around. Like, oh yeah, now this is a real thing. Like all of a sudden now podcasts are the way that everybody should go. Like, there's no reason to leave the house.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, when you look at the news, I mean, you never know who to believe now because all the news channels just seem to have their own agenda now. You know what I mean? So, the news isn't just news. It's like you got Fox who have their agenda. You've got CNN who've got their agenda. The BBC. I mean, in the UK, there's all, people are going mental because they're going, oh, well, why should I pay my TV license? Because BBC's propaganda and this, that, and the other. Yeah. There's all kinds of opinions on the news. They don't just report news. It's their agenda on it,
So this is the thing. My dad lives down in Mexico. He comes up 2-3 times a year to see the grandkids, see the kids, like the whole bit. So he spends some time with me. Say again?
Yeah. See the grandkids.
Yeah. So he's up right now, and we talk all the time about world affairs because he's the one that got me into news as a kid. Like part of our routine, you get home, and I get done with practice, and it'd be like, okay, so 5 to 5:30, we watch the local news. 5:30 to 6, we're watching the national news. Oh, excuse me, 5:30 to 6, we're watching local. And then 6 to 6:30, we're watching the national news. And back then, it was very much journalism. It was very much somebody went out, they had sources, they backed it up. They, even though they name the sources. I'm not saying like in America we have the First Amendment, you don't have to name your source. Totally understand they weren't naming the source, but they had sources. It was backed up. Now it's all talking head. Everybody has an opinion, so they're spewing their opinion, and because it's their opinion, it becomes fact. So I get arguments all the time, and I'm one of those, like, I went to school for politics. Like, I went to school to be a politician. Realized I don't want to be a politician because it doesn't make any sense. Like, the way it's run, it makes no sense to me. And all of a sudden, now I start getting on these Facebook arguments, these Twitter arguments with people. I'm like, and my backup is always, show me the science, show me the facts. I don't care. And like, well, this guy said, watch this. I go, that's great. This guy, one, is an expert in this field because he read 3 articles and saw 2 YouTube videos, and that makes him an expert in the field. That's not how it works. I'm a father doctor that had 12 years of school and then has been working specifically in this field for 20 years. That's the guy I'm going to listen to. I'm not going to listen to this other guy that's giving me an opinion about how the world's going to fall apart and how this is a deep state conspiracy. Like, none of that matters. Like, I need to see the facts I need to see the science behind it. I want to move on to it, but none of that's happening right now. And I'm not sure how it works in the UK, but for here, every single broadcast, it doesn't matter where you lie on the spectrum of left or right or center, it's all talking head. So it's everybody's opinion. There is no fact in it. I'm like, okay, so all of it's thrown out the window.
There's no fact in it at all. And funny you should say it, right? There's a satirical comedian called Jonathan Pye, and he does videos, and he basically takes the piss out of what they're reporting because they're not actually reporting news, And all, things have been invented now, like the woke stuff. I mean, the thing is, MMA, obviously this podcast is about MMA, so I'll have to get back up to MMA. But MMA, you've got an MMA fight coming up. Do you know what I mean? You've got a big fight, Everyone on Facebook thinks they're an MMA. They think they know everything about MMA. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They think they're experts on MMA. They're having a boxing fight comes up. They're an expert on boxing. Politics comes up. A referendum comes up. Obviously, you've got the Biden thing coming up in America. Everyone's a politician. Do you know what I mean? This is the problem with social media. But it's crazy, isn't it?
Awesome. It's awesome to watch it implode. Because all these people are going to be super butthurt when all their pouting and they've been standing behind this, and this is the hill I'm going to die on. I'm standing on this hill, and this is what's happening. And I mean, like, I told you 6 months ago this is all made up, and you believed it. And now you've been staying on a hill. It's all made up. It's all crumbled. So now going forward, anything you say is complete BS. I can't believe anything you ever say again, ever. You're not with that guy. Like, I have to leave you over there where I can't believe you anymore. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's funny because I actually interviewed Ken Shamrock on the Fest, one of these podcasts, and it was a good few weeks ago when I interviewed him, and I said, "How's things, holding up in the States?" And he just says he's just sick of the media lying to him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's people, who have, like you, who've got sense and they can see what's happening. But anyway, let's move on to obviously.
No, I want you talking politics.
Yeah, let's just make this a politics podcast, shall we? Anyway, Frank, let's go back to your how you actually got into martial arts, because I got into martial arts, really been interested in it really from UFC 1, and I know you had your first martial arts was judo, if that's right.
No, my first martial art was wrestling. I wrestled. I was an amateur wrestler for years. Like, I started amateur wrestling at 12. But I was doing martial arts before that. I was a very hyperactive kid. My parents weren't sure what to do with me. Back then when you got divorces, it was always like how to make the kids adjust and all these things. They weren't really sure how it would go. And so my parents were like, we got to find something to do with this kid. So they put me in Kung Fu to start with. I did that for a year and a half, was kind of okay with it. And then moved on to other stuff, got into swimming real heavily. I was a very competitive swimmer. And then my mom got remarried and we moved out of the city into the country. So now we're in the country, there's no pools. And there's no place to do. There's no martial arts academies out there. We're in the country. Like, it's like across the street from me is a cabbage field. Diagonally across the street from me is a cornfield. There's a house on the other side of the cabbage field that one of our friends lived at. Like, everybody out there was farmers or worked in agriculture, or they drove 45 minutes back into the city to work at either Kodak or Xerox or IBM. That's all there was out there. So we didn't have anything to do. So I got into soccer a little bit, got into baseball a little bit. I was decent at it, wasn't great. I'm not a team sport guy. I don't want to have a great game and have us still lose. It doesn't make any sense. Like, to me,
you've got to rely on the other guys then,
I want to be, if I had a great game, then we should have won. Like, that was my theory. So I got into wrestling. Somebody asked me, like, hey, you should come try out for this thing, try out for the sport in the winter. I came and tried out for it, fell in love with it right away. Didn't win a match my first season. I was absolutely horrible. Just tried it and then got the bug, and then I stuck with that. I didn't do soccer all the way through because soccer was soccer was a fall sport, wrestling was a winter sport, and then baseball was a spring sport. And I kind of dropped out of baseball because it just wasn't riding for me. And there's a lot of science to baseball that I wasn't grasping the angle of the ball, how to anticipate, the pitch, and when you're standing at the batter's box, how to see the spin of the laces and understand what's coming through, and that whole game, like, stuff I just don't understand. So I just couldn't grasp my head around it. So I kind of dropped out of baseball and then tried out my junior year for soccer and got cut off the team entirely. It wasn't good enough to even make the team. I was like, I'm just going to be a wrestler then. I'm just dedicating myself to wrestling. Got into judo in college. After all these years of wrestling, got into judo in college. Was messing around with it a little bit, not really taking it serious. Did a couple competitions. And then MMA came up, and back then it was just like cage fighting. It wasn't really MMA at that point. We still haven't had a term for it yet. It was just cage fighting. I did that for a little while, and then I found out that I could make some money doing it, and I wanted to continue to wrestle. So I wanted to compete overseas, and like the UK, your amateur sports don't get any money. You have to find your own sponsors. You have to find your own deals, and so a lot of Americans don't understand. The UK, how strict you are with your amateur athletes. Like, if you're an amateur athlete, you get no help at all unless it's from your parents or a job you have. Like, that's just what you do. America's kind of in that mindset, and I had to find a way to make money so I could train and compete overseas. So I started fighting to pay those bills so I could be able to buy the flight, get the hotel room, get the entry fee to the tournament, and be able to compete overseas. And that's how I got into fighting, really, was just trying to make an Olympic team. And then realized I wasn't any good at wrestling and was never going to make an Olympic team. So I just got into fighting full time. And that's kind of how that's really the pattern. The pattern doesn't happen like that anymore. The pattern now is very much, I'm great at this, let me step in, and then I'll be great at MMA as well. And then you have guys like Conor McGregor and your George St. Pierre's, your Michael Bispings, that really didn't do anything before MMA. They really weren't doing much before MMA and got MMA and then have these huge successful careers because they dedicated their lives to MMA. Now take those guys, and then now imagine somebody only dedicating themselves to only MMA from the time they're 6 years old. All they do is kickboxing, boxing, catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu. They're only wrap themselves in MMA all the way until they turn 18 when they start competing, you know, at a higher amateur level, and then being able to fight professionally. You know, that's all they do. They've done nothing else. So the guys now are way better than we were, way better. Like there's no way, you can't even compare our level.
I just think it's more advanced now, isn't it? You know, I mean, obviously you go to the early UFC. I mean, well, just look at UFC 1. You had, you know, jiu-jitsu versus karate. You had shoot fighting versus kickboxing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a gym I go to in Hartlepool, you know, and I see 8-year-old kids doing arm bars and triangle chokes on each other, and I'm going, I was standing in lines in a karate class when I was 8 years of age. I didn't even know what that was, and it just explains the times. Do you know what I mean? So you had your first, when did you have your first pro MMA fight? I think it was 1997. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, 1997. I graduated college in '96, and then started competing, and it was USWF. One of those. USWF was probably my second one. That was Evan Tanner was the vice president. Steve Nelson was the president. That was down in Amarillo, Texas. A lot of guys went through. The Gilbert brothers went through. Like a bunch of guys went through that system before, because at the time, people forget MMA was illegal in 48 states when I got into it.
It was, yeah,
illegal in 48 states and illegal in the rest of the world. It was only legal in the world in New Jersey and in Nevada. That was it. The only 2 states. Every place else was illegal. So you couldn't even do this sport anywhere. So when I first started fighting, it was no elbows, knees to the head, kicks to the head, open hand punches. You couldn't punch a guy. You had to slap him. That's all you could do is slap him. So it was like a hybrid Prankrist rule, but no shoes, no shin guards, small gloves. And that's kind of what we do. And, of course, any submission you want to do. So that was kind of the way things got started. And it was really confusing because you go down and fight 3 times in a night, and if you won all 3 fights, you get $500. No travel, no hotel room, no per diem, $500. 3 fights. That's what you got. If you lost, you got nothing. Nothing. So you just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to the bar and spending more money because I didn't make it. That's how it started. It's a little weird. Now guys get paid. Like, you know, I look at what I made, and you know, as a ref, I see the sheets of what the guys get paid. You know, it's part of the commission. You see the money they're getting paid. You see the checks. You know, this is the first check for showing up. Here's another check they get if they win it. They get 2 checks. That's the checks. So I see what the money they're making. In my title fights, the guys in the middle of the prelim card make as much money as I did in my title fight. That's how much the game has changed. That's just financial. Now add in the fact these guys have been training so much better. Like you take me, you take Couture, you take Liddell, you take Hughes, you take Miltich, you take any of us from the old days in our prime. We're not even top 20 right now. That's how much better the guys are right now. We're not even top 20.
Do you know, Frank, it's funny you should say that because Chuck Liddell said in his prime he would beat John Jones. I mean, what would you make of that?
Nope.
No chance.
Actually not. No.
No. I mean,
and the thing is that people are still giving Jones this big deal, but we saw Reyes, how beatable he is when they fought in Texas last time. You see how beatable he is? And Liddell in his prime versus a prime Jones, prime Liddell, Jones still wins. Is it a match? Yes, absolutely. Is he gonna put Liddell away? No, Liddell's way too tough. Like he could put Liddell away right now. Like, you know, I mean, well, I take that back. His chin's a little weak. He could put him down, but he can't. But he's like a Chuck Liddell in his prime. You can't put him away. He's a guy that never goes away, but John still wins. You know what I'm saying? You know, Couture still wins. These guys, I mean, yes. Do I think at 48 years old I can go in there and compete with these 22 years old and have a shot? Absolutely. But the reality of it is they're bigger, faster, stronger, have more knowledge, have more base, understand what they're doing. It's just difficult. There's just no way to be able to handle it.
It's like any sport, though, isn't it? I mean, I train MMA. I used to compete ages ago. I was like 16 when I did it. And I stopped because I just thought, you know what, I don't really want to get punched and kicked in the face as a career. Do you know what I mean? I go training back at the gym, and my coach seems to think that I've still got the fitness that I did have when I used to do it. So if lads are training for fights, he's like, oh, Dan, you roll with him, you spar with him. And I'm knackered after 10 minutes. And he's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, well, these guys are here every single day Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and they're hungry
every month, like,
and they want this. And look, I got a family, and I got another job. I got other things I got to do. Like, I don't have time. You know, this guy's living on somebody's couch, driving around in a 1994 car. I'm like, I can't do that, man. I got car seats. I can't do that. I got stuff I got to worry about. I got a wife I got to take care of. I can't be in the middle of this mess trying to do this stuff every day. Like, do I want to take the pay cut? You know, now my other stuff, I make so much more money doing other things than I ever did in MMA. Like, I literally made no money in MMA, even though I'm in the UFC Hall of Fame. I'm the WFA welterweight champ. I'm the Icon champ. I'm like, it's like, dude, like, you just like, I have all these belts, but I have all these trophies behind me, and I didn't make any money doing it. I did it because I loved it. Now that love is waned because I found other passions, other things to do. It's like, there's no reason for me to go in and get beat up. Like, I'd rather fall out of a window on fire, you know, at 20 feet, land in a bag than have somebody punch me in the face 5 times. I'd much rather that. It's so much more fun. Yeah.
But it's interesting because obviously I first heard of you obviously when you were in the UFC. But what I find so interesting is before you made your UFC debut against Matt Hughes, you'd fought some hell of fight. I mean, you fought Machado. Do you know what I mean? He was like up there with the Gracies with regards to grappling. And it was so interesting because when I watched that fight, they were sort of, back then, they were sort of like limpets, weren't they? You could just see he was just trying to, even if he was on his back, he was trying to grab your leg. He was trying to pull guard. I mean, you literally knocked him from pillar to post and he was still hanging on to you.
Yeah, he went at the end of the fight when Hegan threw the towel in. John Jacques was still holding on to my leg, trying not to get hit. I'm just punching the crap out of him. He's got I gave him such a bad cut on his forehead that it's a sieve. It's just straight blood right onto the canvas, and he doesn't stop. Like, he just will not quit. And if his brother didn't throw the canvas in, I was going to keep beating him until the time ran out. Like, he wasn't going to stop. This just wasn't. And back then, the rules are different now too. So that's the other fact that people don't realize. The rules have changed. When now a guy like that, when he gets beat, fight back. Show me when to be in here, but you still hold on to your leg. Okay, the fight's off. But back then, it was like, okay, he's still holding on. Fight must be okay. And he's let go. He's like, I beat this guy from pillar to post. I have crushed his skull. I am literally breaking his eye socket. And you guys are like, oh, it's okay. He's okay. Keep fighting. Like, wow.
It's crazy because they get more money and it's more safe. Whereas back then, there was hardly any money in it. And you beat the shit out of it. And also, not even that. I mean, obviously, you know, pride fights, the weight difference in some fights was just incredible. That's one thing I was going to ask you. How did you find fighting in Japan to fighting in the US or Brazil with regards to the crowds? Because it seemed to be quieter in Japan.
So they're very quiet. They're very respectful as a culture. So they don't make a lot of background noise. They're very quiet. So like when you get on so the one thing they say about Americans, you talk to other cultures. How do you think about Americans? We're always considered fat. Like that we're the fattest people in the country in the world. Like that's, you talk to any other country, like what's the first thing you say about Americans? They're fat. Number one. Number two, we're loud. That's the two things every culture says about us. That is native around the world. We are fat and we are loud. So when you go to Japan, they tell you as an American, hey, look, because I talk a lot with my hands. I'm very animated with my hands. Like, you can't talk with your hands. My hands are always in my pockets. So you see me in Japan, I'm always walking with my hands in my pockets. Like, why? Because I offend people because the way I talk. I get really big. And when I start getting irritated, the hands come out of the pockets and they're like, oh, he's mad. Let's stop talking. So the other thing is that we always talk in a very loud voice. So you get in the subways in Japan, it's very much don't communicate, keep your phone on silent, and have headphones in. And you get an American subway, you have some guy down at the other end with his boombox on as loud as he can, listening to a song. You're like, what are you doing? Like, it's just culturally, they're very quiet. So they don't make a lot of noise anyway, Japanese. They're very quiet culture. So then when you go to the stadium, you're like, wow, it's like there's 55,000 people in here, and I can literally talk to you on the other side of not the other side of the cage, the other side of the arena. You and I can have a conversation at normal voice level and understand each other. Everybody else around us is going to be pissed because we're talking so loud, but we can hear each other. So you get in there, and the other thing about the Japanese culture is they understand the ground game extremely well.
They do.
Extremely well. So they see a position change, they'll start clapping and cheering because they realize. We used to watch Shinji Aoki fight. Like, position change, they get out of their seats. Like, it was amazing because they knew it was happening. American crowds don't get the ground game very much. So you get a lot of stand them up, punch him in the face. Like it's not a game right now. It's a whole different game. So people just don't understand the ground game as much as the Japanese do. And so as a result, they're very much more respectful. They don't speak unless they have something very important to say. So when a fan comes over to say something, it's not going to be a weird conversation. It's always going to be very, very quick, very quiet, and they're super excited to see you. But when you're in there fighting, it's like now. When you watch these fights with no fans, that's how fighting in Japan is all the time. You can hear the other corner. You can hear the referee. You can hear the commentators. You can hear the timekeeper. You hear everything. Everything is like right in your face. Like, you hear it all when you're out there. You're like, oh, wow, this is like this. What they're doing, what the fighters are going through right now, this is what it's like fighting in Japan in front of 55,000 people. And that's just you like.
Yeah, obviously there's no crowds at the minute. But it's interesting because I spoke to Vernon White about this, because obviously he fought Pancrase before he went into the UFC, because obviously he trained at the Lions Den and Ken Shamrock was, you know, getting the guys out there. He said he found it easier fighting when the crowd were more quiet, because then he could hear his corner and the other fighter could hear their corner. What are your views on that? Do you feel the same? So
if baseball, American baseball started yesterday. Yesterday was opening day. And I'm a big baseball fan. I have a lot of friends that used to play the sport. I have a couple of acquaintances, they're not friends per se, but are playing professionally right now. So I'm interested in the game. So I want to see how they do. And one guy, and forgive me, I forget what team it was from, but it was one of the opening games, was like, you know, what's it like playing, you know, not in front of any fans? There's like maybe 25 people in the stands. And it's like some random, like the manager, like the owner, his family, and like some other random guy that's super important, like whoever it may be. That's it. Everything else is cutouts. It's cardboard cutouts of people in the stands. It's just really random, weird stuff. He's like, at this level, if anybody is playing because he wants to be in front of a crowd, he cannot make it at this level.
No.
You're not playing at this level. You love the fans. You appreciate the fans. You want to do all the autograph signings. You want to be there for them. But the reality of it is, we're not playing because we want to hear the crowd noise. We're playing because I still have a passion and a love for the game. If you ask, try and think. If you ask Kamaru Usman, let's take Usman right now.
Yeah.
And Masvidal. You want them to fight again. And that fight's going to go the same way that fight went. That fight can't go any other way. When they fight again, that fight will happen the exact same way again, unless Gamebred punches Usman early. Otherwise, it's not. It's going to be the exact same fight. This is how that fight goes, because styles. This is how that fight goes. We see that fight again. If you told them, hey, look, we're going to put you guys in a parking garage, and only light will be the one light over the top of you where you guys are fighting, and nobody will be there, but we will know who wins and who loses, they would still fight.
They would.
They don't care. They don't care about people cheering them on when they're fighting. They fight because they're fighters. They fight because they love the game. That's the why they're there. That's how it works. And they are absolutely amazing to watch these guys fight. But yes, we saw it. Have you been watching the UFC fights?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you got the Fight Island. We've got Till.
Till and Whitaker this weekend. Believe me, I got a whole thing going on with that one. But they're like, you got to understand that they hear the commentators, and the fighters are like, "Shut up, DC, it's not true," and they keep punching.
Yeah, right. Because Michael Bisping said something, didn't he? Did you remember that the other week? And the fighters started joining in with the commentary. I think it's really good. It's more entertaining, I think.
The biggest issue is, now that I'm official, from a judging refereeing standpoint, there's conversations we want to have with the fighter that we don't want the rest of the world to hear, because the conversations might be a little embarrassing. It might take them down a path they don't want to go down, and we're trying to make that fighter look as good as possible. So the conversation we're about to have, we don't want you to know we're having it. Hey, look, we saw it was a punch. We all know it was a punch. I called time because you reacted like it was an eye poke. We need to get this fight going. What do you want to do? We don't want to have that conversation. Like, oh, it's an eye poke. It's an eye poke. We don't want to embarrass them, because in the reaction they thought they got poked. We want them to understand. Hey, look, we saw the jumbotron. My second referee told me it's illegal. It was a punch. We got to get this fight going. You good to go? But I don't want them to have that conversation where the rest, so the fans can come on them later on social media and be like, man, you acted like a little bitch because you got poked, because you got punched in the eye. Like, no, I don't want any of that. So I want to keep the conversation private. I want to have a conversation with the doctor. Hey, doc, he's taking too much damage. I need to get him out of this fight. Give me a reason to get him out of the fight. That cut's too bad. Stop the fight. Up, doctor, wave it off. We're over. Like, I got to have that. Can't have that conversation anymore because they're mic'd. They're listening to my mic the entire time. So you see a lot of fighters, a lot of refs that reach up and grab a hold of it as having a conversation, So, Danny, you okay? I just want to make sure. And the reason why they're whispering is because every mic, the mic underneath the ring, the mic above the ring, the mic set up around the outside of the ring, the commentating booth, everybody's listening. Everybody's listening. So all of a sudden now you're like, so Danny, I mean, your nose is pretty bad. The doctor looked at it. Doctor said it's okay. Are you ready to go or not? I need to get this started but now all of a sudden we have this whole conversation. I'm about to yell it because everyone's going to hear it. And now it's a problem of like, did I give too much information to the wrong side? Am I being biased to the wrong fighter? Because now I have to be. It becomes a whole new issue from an official standpoint. But it's something you have to get through because this is the nature of the sport now. The sport is forever evolving. We have now evolved into COVID. We have to evolve with COVID if you want to keep competing and if you want to keep officiating. And it does become an issue. But man, it is. When you got people yelling back at Bisping as they're in the fight, you're like, oh, okay, this is a little much. Like, okay, now it's a little weird because literally you can listen to them. And you see the booth. You see them like Felder and Anik and Bisping. They're 20 feet away from each other.
Yeah, they are.
Headset. So when they're having a conversation, they're looking off. They're looking 20 feet away to talk to that guy. He's not right next to them like we're used to. So they all have their own monitors, their own screens, their own sanitation. They got their own. Their social distancing is the term. This is another interesting thing. Do you guys have the same terms we do over here? Like,
we have social distancing. Okay. It was 2 meters. It's now a meter. Now
it's so weird. Like all these words they're giving us is like this is not social distancing. We're not like this is not social. We're not being distant is not a social occasion. Like why do you call it social distancing? I don't want to get back into it. I went on another path.
Let's start a new podcast and we'll do politics one. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that.
It drives me nuts. Like just call it what it is. We don't want you to be within 6 feet of anybody unless you've quarantined with them. So like my wife and I'll be out at a restaurant. And like just now, I picked up my wife from work. And so she works at, are you familiar with Lululemon, the clothing company? It's a very high fashion clothing company, athletic wear, mainly started.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right. So I go pick her up from work today. She immediately takes off her mask. I take off my mask and I give her a kiss and I give her a hug and I ask her about how her day is. And we're talking with our masks off. And somebody comes by and is like, put your mask on. I'm like, no. And I just kept talking. And they're like, you're out. You have to be. I'm like, this is my wife. We live together. I don't have to social distance from my family. Let's not be ridiculous. The lady was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You think I kiss everybody in the mouth like this? Like, what are you crazy? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But this is where we're at.
It's a new thing in the UK, right? So as of today, the 24th, everybody has to wear a mask when they go into shops.
Yeah, we do here. I'm in LA. That's been going on for weeks here. Yeah,
it's tough from COVID to start for us to just walk into shop. Obviously, after they've reopened, we can walk into shops anywhere, but we won't catch COVID until the 24th of July. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just become ridiculous.
New Zealand had a good idea, and I might be incorrect in this. It might be another country, but I think New Zealand's the one I remember because they beat it. And what they did is we didn't force everybody to wear masks. We just forced you to social distance. Like you got to fine if you weren't social distancing. That's just the reality of it. So we didn't force you to wear a mask. And so people are like, I'm going to get a fine if I don't social distance. I can't control if somebody walks inside my bubble, my 6-foot bubble. I can't control that. So I'm just going to stay home. And then their government was like, we're going to keep paying you. We're going to give everybody, your employers, enough money to pay you what you normally would make if you were working this week, so that you're not struggling. And so when everyone's like, it's not unemployment. I'm making my regular wage. I'm okay to stay home. I'm making my regular wage. I'll stay home. Now it's over. You're like, you just go right back to work. Like what happened? Nothing. I'm just back at work. Like it's gone. Yeah. I gotta go because no one passes anybody else. Everybody just beat it. In America, we're very much like, no, you can't tell me what to do. If you make me wear a mask, you're infringing on my constitutional rights.
Yeah. That's the thing, is we're the same, and the social distancing thing is, yeah, yeah, and the social distancing thing as well. It's like, right, I'm going to go for a 3-mile run. It ends up turning into a 6-mile run because you're running towards somebody and you're like, shit, I need to cross the road. So then you cross the road.
So my wife and I, we bike a lot, like Lance Armstrong road bike. Like, we ride a lot.
I love going on. I've got a mountain bike. I love going on my bike.
And so she's like, I'm not wearing a mask when I'm riding. I can't do it. Like I can barely ride without the mask. I'm going to wear this mask. Yeah. I talked to a cop. He's like, who are you riding with? I go, I'm riding with my wife. He goes, you ride in groups? I go, yeah, we ride in groups sometime. There's a big group of us that all ride together, and we try to get together like a couple times a week. He's like, so when you ride together, he's like, when you're riding together, what do you guys do? I go, we stay. It's a 3-foot distance between my tire and that guy's back tire. That's the new rule. Instead of being right on tire to tire, where you're like riding, trying to draft, we have a 3-foot distance. He's like, right. So on your seat to his seat, how far is it? I go, from my back, from his back to my front, it's 6 feet. He's like, then you're fine. You're social distance. You're 6 feet riding in this pack. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter if you're riding like that. We're not going to stop you and give you tickets for not social distancing. I go, what about not having a mask on? He goes, carry a mask on you. You might have that cop say, you got to wear a mask. You put the mask on. You ride 3 miles, take the mask off, put it back in your pouch. Because it's just ridiculous. Like, there's no reason why you're working out to have this mask on. He goes, but we do hit joggers. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, because what do they do at lights? Wait, crossing lights. They stop.
Yeah.
Everybody else. He goes, what do you guys do at crossing lights? We stop. Like, I don't get hit by cars. Yeah, you're in traffic. What is around you in traffic? I go, cars. He's like, yeah, they got the windows up. Like, you don't have to worry about it. It's totally
yeah.
Like, oh, now I understand what you're saying, because I understand. He's like, yeah, you're social distance. Like, don't worry about it. You go, but then you get these people who are like, I'm not wearing a mask because it infringes on my constitutional rights. I'm like, look at the UFC. Look at the UFC. Look at what's happening at the UFC. The only 3 people, every fight, there's only 3 people that don't have a mask on. Okay? Well, I take that back. 6 if you count the commentators. But I don't count them.
Yeah.
It's the 2 fighters and the referee. The judges, the doctors, the inspectors, everybody else around all has a mask on. Everybody else has a mask on. You can't fight with a mask on, right? And the fighters can't hear my instructions as a referee with my mask on, so I have to take it off. Guess what happens the moment the fight is over? I can't even get out of the cage before they give me a brand new mask and tell me to put it on so I'm walking to the cage door. Oh, fight's over. This is all great. I have to put a mask on before I can walk out of that cage. That's what the UFC is doing. They have figured this out for everybody else, the entire planet, not just every sport, every business, every company. They have figured out how to make this thing work. And I'm a nerd. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm a nerd.
Oh,
I watched the very first fight, the very last fight. I am on that. I am watching everything in between. And in between each fight, they're out there spraying the entire canvas down with disinfectant. They're wiping down the top of the cage with disinfectant. They're spraying down the stairs. They're mopping the stairs before the next fight comes out. They're wiping everything down all the time. Like, yeah, that's what happens. And guess what? When you're done fighting, you don't get to hang around the back anymore. You don't sit there and wait to go sit out there with the crowd. You get shipped back to the hotel. You're out. You're done. Your fight's over. You're done. You've been cleared by the doctor. Everything's fine. Get the hell out of here. You're out of here. Go back, take a shower, get clean, go back to your hotel room. Oh, by the way, here's another COVID test. Then go to your hotel room. Like, they want it like 100%. Now you're quarantined until the COVID test comes back and says you're clear. Then you can go have dinner. Then you can have drinks, do whatever. But also, oh, by the way, when you're done, you have to still socially distance in the hotel, except from your teammates, like your crew. Right. So this is the way the world's coming to. Like, when we all go back to work at a full time, and this is how it is. And I can use my wife as an example because she's back at work now. Like, for retail, this is what they do. Every guest, they wipe down the top. They take no cash. Sorry, we are cashless. We're taking no cash right now because cash, we all know cash is dirty. How many times have you had cash in your mouth as you're trying to mix bills and try to do stuff, and you put it in your pocket, you haven't washed your hands in like 3 hours, and you're messing with it. Like, so everyone's cashless. Now that's another deep state conspiracy theory. Oh, we're going
I was just going to say that. Yeah. Is the globalists trying to stop us from using cash so that everybody uses card, and then it'll stop all the drug cartels? But then if you try and stop all the drug cartels, then there'll be massive wars. I mean, you know what I mean? You're just getting into so much deep shit now. You know what I mean?
It's so much easier just to fight. It's just
yeah.
God.
Anyway, let's talk about UFC 45. So that was your UFC debut, and you had a title fight on your UFC debut.
It doesn't happen anymore.
But your record was incredible before you did get the your UFC debut. I did hear you say once in an interview that basically Matt Hughes was just cleaning up with everybody.
Yeah,
and that is the reason.
The only reason why they called me. One, I was talking. I was trying to sell a fight, so I was running my mouth, right? So that gave him some. Oh, he's talking a little bit, and there was nobody left. He already cleaned up the division twice. He beat everybody in the division 2 times. What else are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna do? You got to bring somebody else in. So bring in the loudmouth. Let's bring in the loudmouth and see what he does. And that's how I got in. And that's ultimately, it was just the right time, right place. Because nowadays, they don't need you, right? You don't need to bring anybody in from an outside source to come in right away for a title fight. They don't need to. Their roster is so strong. And if you look at UFC and Bellator, just take the top 2. Take UFC and Bellator. Take ONE FC out of it. Take ONE FC out of it. UFC and Bellator, at the majority of weight classes, all top 20 in the independent ranking system of every weight class, male and female, is in one of those 2 organizations, right? So if you're a champ of, say, LFA, because LFA is doing a bunch of fights right now. They're doing Ed Suarez runs that, and they're doing a bunch of fights 4 weekends in a row up in South Dakota, because they allow fights in South Dakota. So they're fighting right now. So that's the one I'm using. So say you're the champ of LFA, and you get brought in as the champ from LFA. They sign you, and you have to give up your belt. You have to relinquish your belt because you're being signed by the UFC now. You can't fight in LFA anymore. You get brought in the UFC. You think your first fight's gonna be a title fight? No, it's not. You maybe you get a top 10. Maybe you get a top 10. But the reality of it is, they're going to dump you to somebody that's more likely going to kick your ass, because the UFC is not forgiving to anybody. You sign that dotted line, you are now going to fight the wolves. Are you going to feast or famine? That's what you're going to find out right away. There is no easy fight. That guy's a tomato can. Or you beat him up in 45 seconds. You knocked that guy out in 13 seconds. You did this, you did that. Doesn't matter. Everybody is a beast that's in these organizations right now. Everybody. There are no easy fights. There is not an easy fight anymore in any organization. And so when I got in, it was right place, right time. Does not happen anymore. Will not happen again. And I'm not saying, I'm better than anybody else because it happened. I'm like, no. Back then, they had 8 fights a year. 8. That's all they threw every year. 8 fights. You were lucky if you could fight twice a year for the UFC. There's only 8 fights. Right? They're only doing 12 fights a night. Like, how many fights are there possible? They didn't have the roster. Now, shit, they threw 3 fights in 8 days.
I can't keep up with it. Like, UFC was on, and I try not to go on social media because I'm like, I don't want to know what the results are.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll watch it on a Sunday, and I'll say, right, I'll get a takeout, I'll get a Chinese. Do you know what I mean? And I'll watch it then, and then even still, I'm going, what the fuck? 8 hours of fights. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy, isn't it? And obviously,
so I love the Saturday cards because my wife works Saturday, so I have to pick her up, and I can't watch the fights till she comes home. So my wife's a timekeeper for the state of California, and she does boxing MMA. So she actually works more than I do as an official because she timekeeps. So she's working all the time. So they're like, she's like, you can't watch fights until I come home. That's what they're like. Okay. So I come home and I get the prelims. I watch all the prelims. I skip the introductions. I skip the walkouts. I skip the walk-ins. I skip all that stuff, and I skip all the commercials. I jump through everything. I'm watching fight. And so you're like, wow, that was an hour and a half of fights. Like it was a 3-hour prelim, but it was actually an hour and a half of fights. Like, holy crap! I'm still trying to catch up now to the live event. I keep trying to catch up, and then I usually don't catch up to like the co-main event. And finally, I'm like, oh, I'm right. Okay, now I finally caught up. Co-main event started. Yeah, it's just like there's so much going on now, and like I said, like these fights, there were a couple cards. That Wednesday card, forgive me, I forget. I think so many fights. I forget who was on that Wednesday card. Ended kind of quick. There's a couple fights. There was like the first 4 fights, whatever, all in the first round, which that rarely happens now. It's like there's usually you might get 1 or 2, but it's going to be second round before they finish, and then the rest of them go to all 3 rounds, or they finish in the 3rd round. These fights were quick. It was quick, and you could see. And this is my interpretation. Now, mind you, I don't talk to most of these fighters. I don't train with any of these fighters. I don't hang out with them. I don't see them out for dinner or having drinks or anything. My feeling is they got a phone call to fight. They absolutely said yes because they need to make some money, and so they're going to go fight. And they're like, can I make weight? But I really haven't been training because my gym is closed. My strength and conditioning place is closed. My chiropractor is closed. My dietitian is giving me notes over the phone, but I can't actually talk to him because he's closed too. Like everybody's closed, and they showed up to fight and went and brought, and we're ready. We're game. We're ready to fight. Just weren't ready to fight physically. And that's why these fights, you're seeing these fights get done quicker. Some of them are getting done finished faster because a guy like me is like, I'm not in shape to go 3 rounds. I got to get this done quick or I'm going to fall apart. So let's go hard and see what happens. And the other side is like, I haven't trained at all. I don't know if I'm going to be ready to go. Let me hold back for a second and see what happens. And they get crushed. You're like, okay, I should have went hard. And that's kind of what I see in a lot of those fights right now.
Yeah. So when you fought Matt, so you were before Chael Sonnen, really, the first proper trash talker, if you would like to call it that. Do you know what I mean? So when you fought Matt Hughes, Matt Hughes came across as the nice guy, didn't he? But you said behind the scenes he wasn't. He was actually.
He's not. He's not. Back then, he's not. He's not. He wasn't a nice guy. But we've all seen it happen. And for you guys have proper football. So we have American football. You guys have proper football. In a proper football, you take a guy.
Yeah.
So you take a 20-year-old, and all of a sudden he's Liverpool. He gets signed by Liverpool, and he gets a signing bonus of like $6 million. He's 19. What do you think a guy's going to do with $6 million at 19 years old? You give me $6 million at 19 years old, I'm a complete asshole. 100% on a dick. 100%. Man, I got money to throw. I can burn it. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Yeah. Like, so you take a guy like Matt, who's a farm kid, he's a country kid. He was raised with hard ethics, super religious, church every Sunday, Bible study every Wednesday. Had to go to, had to be on a tractor every day, got up early and wrestled hard and wrestled in college and did a whole bit. Then you obviously give him some success, some notoriety, and give him some money that he would never make while working on the farm. Obviously, he's got real money. Yeah, you're gonna be an asshole too. You're gonna treat women like garbage. You're gonna do as many things as you can. You're gonna beat up guys in the bar because you're gonna get away with it. We see it. We see it with Conor. We see it with Conor McGregor. How much more trouble did he get in after the Mayweather fight than before the Mayweather fight? All the shit that he does now because he has unlimited amount of resources. You're like when you know that you can throw a hand truck through a bus window, or you can go smack an old guy in a bar and know that my litigator will take care of it. Or what do you guys?
He's got the money to take care of it. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't care. Like it doesn't matter. So so Matt, the train accident and his divorce and the restraining order from his wife against the kids and his twin brother putting a restraining order against him, that has really changed him. And you get into some spaces like that will change you as an individual. It gives you a different perspective. But yes, back then he was a complete dick. He was a complete asshole, and he's a bigot, and he's a racist, he's a misogynist. Like he's all those things.
Wow,
all those things. That's 100% what he was back then. He still is a little bit now. You don't really change your ways later, but this is who he is. But I was realizing that I'm a huge fan of Muhammad Ali, and I grew up on Hulk Hogan. The two guys.
We all did, man. He's a legend.
They would sell stuff. They learned how to sell the fight. They learned how to sell the fact that you come in and watch them compete. And I was like, I got to learn how to sell. Otherwise, no one's going to care about me. Nobody cares about the guys that show up. They only care about the winners. Unless the guys that show up have some kind of talk, have some kind of gimmick behind them. So my gimmick was trash talking. And so I would make stuff up on the fly. I'm quick-witted. And in my wrestling locker room, every male locker room, I don't know how it is in the female locker room, because it's never allowed in there. But the male locker rooms, we trash talk each other all the time. Doesn't matter what sport, what practice, afterwards. Even if you beat this guy's ass, he's still making fun of you because he caught you 3 days ago. Remember I caught you 3 days ago? Like, dude, I caught you 4 times tonight. You want to bring up that thing? Like, I beat you already. Like, so the trash talk was kind of a normal way to go about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start this game. I'm going to figure it out. And Chael Sonnen made it better. He made it way better. And then Conor McGregor put it to a whole new level. A whole new level. Like, you're like, gee, like, man, I wish I had that game. I wish I had Conor's game when I was, because it wouldn't have mattered how many fights I lost. It wouldn't have mattered anymore if I even trained. I could talk my way into fights. We saw it with Chael. He was on a losing streak. Was never going to beat Tito. Was not going to happen. Talked his way into a fight with Tito. Talked his way into it. Just talked his way into it. And obviously, we saw that fight when he got his ass kicked. but he talked his way into that fight. And that's kind of how these trash talkers are working, is they're trying to make you interested in the fight. And a guy like Conor gets so many people interested. Half the people want to see him lose, half the people want to see him win, but 100% of the people are watching him. 100%. And that's just how it goes. And that's the game now, is that it comes off weird sometimes. Some guys trying to trash talk, you're like, don't do that ever again. It's just weird.
Yeah, it doesn't come across right with certain fighters. I mean, I love Tony Ferguson as a fighter, but as a talker, I'm like, oh, do you know what I mean? It just doesn't work, does it? You know?
The best thing that ever happened is when Al Hamish took Brock Lesnar in WWE and turned him into a monster and never let him speak. Never let him speak, because he's super kind and polite. He's articulate. He doesn't raise his voice. You're like, that's not a monster. Just don't talk. He's like, the monster doesn't talk. He's got a mouthpiece, and that was the best gimmick that ever happened.
Yeah.
And now it's like with Tony Ferguson, you're like, you just wish he just had some hot chick that sat next to him at all the press conferences. And she's like, so Mr. Ferguson would like to tell everybody, and that was the gimmick. And he just talks. He doesn't say shit. She just talks. That'd be
yeah, absolutely. Anyway, let's move on to your so after you fought Matt Hughes, obviously you got a title fight in your UFC debut. Then you went into you fought Dennis Hallman at UFC 48. Now Dennis Hallman had beat Matt Hughes twice. But you'd already beaten Dennis Hallman previous to that, didn't you, in a different organization?
Yeah,
how were you going into that fight with Dennis Hallman? Because I mean, he's a tough cookie.
I knew for sure I was gonna beat Dennis. Because I can break him easy. Like I can crack him. Like you when you're a wrestler, you learn. Like that's one of the things about wrestling. And that's why we always push that wrestling is the best sport for MMA, because you learn real quick how to break somebody.
I think so, yeah.
And then you also understand when they're broken. Like not only you break a guy, but you see the signs of a guy breaking. I knew I could break Dennis very, very quickly. The reason why Dennis beat Matt twice is because he caught him early. The first time he caught him on an armbar, and then he caught him on an armbar both times. But the second time, Matt put his patented double, ran across the ring with him, and on the way down, Dennis rotated an armbar and caught him on the way down. So it was like, so there's nothing that Matt could do. It was very early. If Matt had time to kind of play with him a little bit, he would have broken him. He would have saw that. But remember, too, the MMA math doesn't work really well. Hughes beat Trigg twice. Trigg beat Hallman twice. Hallman beat Hughes twice. But Trigg can never beat Hughes, and Hallman can never beat Trigg. This is just, like the math doesn't make any sense. You're like,
the beauty of MMA, though, isn't it?
and never rotates. It's just like it's a weird thing. And it's still very much, in even the fights today. We talked about Usman and Masvidal earlier. Styles still make the matchups. It's still very much styles will kind of dictate how the fight goes. And stylistically speaking, Usman always beats Gamebred. Always. Always. Unless Gamebred can hit him solid and get him wobbly early and then overrun him, he's not going to be able to beat him. But the deal is with Gamebred, he still has that power in the 5th round. So if Usman doesn't smother him immediately, even in the 5th round, he's going to get hit. And then the fight can be over. So it's always going to be that way. Styles make the matchup. My style against Matt is very beatable. But my style against Hallman is unbeatable. And that's just how it goes. And it's very weird. Even now, you still see it like these guys, you beat this guy, you beat this guy, you should be able to beat this guy. It's like stylistically, it's not going to work. It's just not going to happen. And that is still how MMA works today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because I mean you look at obviously Khabib. You know, he's just tearing everybody apart. Do you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, you know, obviously, Ferguson got beat off Gaethje.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, you know, if you either are Gaethje or you had Ferguson, if you were going to put money on who would beat Khabib, I would probably put my money on Ferguson.
Right.
If I'm honest with you.
But stylistically, Ferguson's a tougher matchup. But he can't get there.
Yeah.
So for Khabib, he's like, yeah, I got Gaethje now. This is an easier matchup. It's an easier matchup for him. But it's still not easy where he's like, I can't do anything. I still have to train my ass off. I still have to show up. And Gaethje has a good shot at beating him because Gaethje's tough to hold down. He's a good wrestler and hits like a truck. But Khabib takes the hits, but he can't. But the difference is that Ferguson could have submitted Khabib from the bottom where Gaethje will not be able to do that. So Gaethje has to take Khabib down and get on top, and then we have to wonder what is Khabib like on his back. We're going to find out, is he any good on his back? But more likely he's not. You know, and this is the question. We don't know this because we've never seen it, and that's the other thing that comes into training. People always talk about, oh, your submission game's no good. Your submission game's no good. All you ever get is TKOs and KOs. Well, it's because I TKO and KO them. I never get to my submission game. You don't know how good I am at submission because you never see it. So it's always that question of how good is he? Is Khabib training off his back? You better believe it. He trains with he trains with AKA up in San Jose.
Cormier. I mean,
yeah,
Cormier, who's a lot heavier than him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so he's always training off his back. He's learning how to train off his back. We just never see it because he's always on top. This fight with Gaethje, we're going to see it, and we're going to figure out, is he any good off his back? Now, if Khabib is good off his back, if he gets taken down and is able to either get away a bunch of times or do a lot of damage from his back, all of a sudden Khabib becomes the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world because he's beaten everybody. And now the one question we have is now answered. You're like, okay, like he's the best guy in the world. That's just what it is. And then he can go on and win a bunch of fights and become the best guy that to ever fight the game. Like beat Silva, beat GSP, and be the guy all of a sudden because he's that good all the way around. And the thing is, like, there's still a lot of ifs. Like we saw Anderson Silva back before, you know, he was pound for pound the best fighter and blah blah. And then Chris Weidman or Chael Sonnen actually taught us how to beat Silva. Like Chael showed us, wrestle him, take him down, beat him up. Chael just got sloppy at the last 15 seconds of that 5th round and got caught in that triangle. Like if he knew any kind of triangle defense, even being exhausted, he would have got out of it and he would have won and it just could have held on for seconds, would have won it. But he didn't do that. He didn't know how to do it. So then Weidman comes, he's like, oh, I know how to beat him. I'm going to out-wrestle him. And he wrestled him and punched him and wrestled him and punched him and wrestled him and punched him. And then he beats him, right? So it's very easy to figure out how to beat somebody when they have ifs. What is he any good on his back? I don't know. What if? What if he gets put on his back? Will he defend? What if it becomes a striking fest with Masvidal and Usman? Becomes a striking fest. What happens? Well, Masvidal wins that every time. But
yeah,
smart, and you make it your game. All of a sudden, we always have that if. Can Usman punch? Well, we saw it against Colby Covington. He can absolutely punch against a guy that's a superior wrestler. Colby's a better wrestler than Usman is. He's a much better wrestler.
Yeah. But
Usman uses knockout power to offset his quickness. I'm going to shoot. I'm not going to shoot. Bang. I'm going to shoot. I'm not going to shoot. Bang. Oh, you're wobbly. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, fight's over. What the hell? It's like, he knocked me out. Well, yeah, because you thought he was going to wrestle, and he knew he could not wrestle you, so he punched you. So this is the style still make the game. But really with Khabib and Gaethje, that fight, stylistically speaking, is a very tough fight. But it's also going to be a fight where we're going to get some answers found out. Is Khabib bad off his back? If he is, everybody else fighting Khabib from now on is going to take him down and beat him on his back. Right? It's like Liddell.
Well, I mean, they could try and take him down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, try. Excuse me, try. It's like with Liddell. Once people, you know, was it Jackson, Rampage Jackson taught us how to beat Liddell. And he was like, I'm just not in shape. I can't chase him. What do you mean? I'm not in shape. I don't have the shape to chase him around the ring, so I can't chase him. So I just had to take the center and stand there. Well, if you go back and look at the fights, Chuck would make you chase him. And that's how he'd knock you out. You chase him, he'd switch feet and bang, and knock you out with that hook and drop you. You're like, dude, what the hell? People stop chasing him. Oh, I stopped chasing him. The Rashad stopped chasing him. Everybody starts knocking him out because no one's chasing him, and obviously he has to chase them. That's not his style. So you learn from the first guy to beat you, teaches everybody else how to subsequently beat you after that. And that's what we see with Gaethje and Khabib, if Gaethje can get it done. If he can't get it done, either he can't take Khabib down, which means now Khabib's got amazing takedown defense and amazing striking power, or he gets taken down and gets back up to his feet. If he never takes Khabib down and Khabib wins the fight, we still have that, well, maybe if he gets taken down. Maybe if he gets taken down, we still haven't found anybody yet to take him down. Like with Conor, it's super easy to beat Conor McGregor. It's super easy. Chad Mendes showed us. Chad Mendes showed us how to beat Conor. Take him down. Take him down, beat him up. Take him down, beat him up. Khabib showed us. Take him down, beat him up. Take him down, beat him up. They showed us how this happens. Chad couldn't do it. He had a 10-day notice for the fight. He has no energy. He blew his gas out, take him down the first round, gets finished the second round. Khabib had a full training camp. Took him down, beat him up. And there's nothing that Conor could do with it. No matter how much Conor trains in wrestling, now he can't beat Khabib. He has to change his game plan. As good as John Kavanagh is a head coach, he has to change his game plan to figure out how to beat Khabib, because Khabib's going to beat him in every area. The one area that Conor can win, keep on the feet. Do not let Khabib take you down. He can learn takedown defense. He can't get that good at takedown offense to take Khabib down.
No.
If he can keep on their feet, he can win the fight. And that becomes very interesting. If Gaethje is from that same mindset, is like, I'm just not going to take him down. I'm not going to let him take me down either. When I get a stand-up fest to see how long I can hit him. And Gaethje hits like a truck. All of a sudden, that changes that fight. Then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, now a Conor Khabib fight part 2 is not as interesting because Khabib lost. But now we also see how Conor can win the fight. Now let's see what happens with Conor and Gaethje. And Gaethje's going to go, he can't take me down. I'm going to take him down at will. I'm going to beat him up. It's stylistics all of a sudden make the matchup again. So we're back.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's really interesting because people talk about Khabib's hands. He lets his hands down, you know?
Yeah.
And then he actually dropped Conor with a punch. Do you know what I mean? I've watched that fight so many times. I mean, if you've got that type of, you know, strength and conditioning as a wrestler, you know, your punching power will come, you know.
The biggest thing with wrestlers is that we're very square. Everything we're taught is we square hip, square, square up. So we punch very much like this, arm punching. Once you teach a wrestler how to rotate their shoulders on a punch, it's over. But then also you get the wrestling problem. Happened to Koscheck, happened to Trigg, happened to Couture, happened to Ortiz, happened to Liddell. All of a sudden, you can't take us down, and we can knock you out. We're going to stand up here and fight.
It's a bloody game.
How we get knocked out? It's because you're trying to stand there and fight, idiot. You're a wrestler. You're a wrestler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really dangerous situation. You know, I mean, when I started doing judo, you know, and I trained with a couple of wrestlers, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was knackered. Do you know what I mean? And these guys are constantly on me. I'm going, where do they get their juice from? Like, how are these guys, like, lasting so long? But it's just the training. It's just what you do. Do you know what I mean?
And now, like, I'm 48. I don't have the shape I used to have. I'm not in that space anymore. And I'll go to a practice, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do these things, whatever. And it'll be some young kid that's competing right now at the amateur level, about ready to make the pro level. And I'll go with him the whole time. And I'm like, I'm just exhausted. Like, I've got nothing left. And we'll be in the locker room afterwards, just like, dude, like, how often do you train? And how often do you go? I'm like, dude, I train like maybe once or twice a week because I got other things going on. I can't get here all the time. He's like, what else do you do for your cardio? Because you destroyed me the entire time. Like, dude, I was barely hanging on. I'm barely hanging on the entire from the first moment of the first round to the last moment of the last round. I'm barely holding on. He's like, he's like, just mentally, man. I just know how to find that gear that, like, I gotta survive. I gotta get through this. And so I also never stopped moving. I never stopped trying to defend or fight. So as a result, because I'm never stopping, I get away with other stuff because I'm just like, nope, I'm just gonna pull this arm out and see what happens. Oh, the arm came free. Okay, now I'm on top. Oh shoot, here's a tuck choke. Oh, I got a tuck choke. Okay, all right, I won. Like, what happened? Like, I'm too exhausted to find anything. You just gave it to me. I didn't get anything. You gave me stuff. That's what happens.
Yeah. You just like, fuck this. I just want to either get you inside mount or I want to pull guard. I just want to rest. Do you know what I mean?
Trust me. Trust me. If I get inside with an underhook, I'm putting a hand in your face, and there's going to be no movement from me for 30 seconds.
Whoa.
If you move, then we're going to move. But if you don't move, none of us are moving.
Yeah. I'm happy to put my arm in your face and just last here. I'm not even going to go for the figure four. I'm just going to fucking wait. Do you know what I mean? Until the lesson's over.
If you look at the clock. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. 15 more seconds. I can do this.
Yeah. But no, it's anyway, going back to there's loads I've wanted to talk about, but we're literally, I mean, this is normally an hour, but we've had so much fun, Frank, if I'm honest with you. I've had such a good time. But I want to talk about the second Matt Hughes fight, you know, because Dana White said that is the best fight in UFC history.
Yeah, he just announced that 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
He did. And obviously there was controversy, wasn't there? With the low strike. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So
I'd love to hear your side.
The same thing happened with Holman in the first fight. So if you go on, I think it's on Fight Pass. Yeah, it's on Fight Pass because UFC bought WFA. You'll see the fight with me and Holman. I kick him in the bladder, which is below the belt.
Yeah, I saw that.
Remember, MMA rules come from a boxing background. So MMA is controlled by the ABC, American Boxing Council. That's where the rules come from. So we set the rules, and they also control boxing. So it used to be below the belt, but remember, we kick inside leg, we kick outside leg. You know, we punch. Like it's not the same as boxing. So before, in the rule, it was below the belt was illegal. Well, Larry Landless was the ref. I kicked him below the. I kicked him on the belt line, but it was below the belt, 100% from a boxing standpoint, but it was right in the bladder. So it made him. He had to urinate all of a sudden. He had to pee himself, and he couldn't get himself back to control. So they gave him the 5 minutes, even though you can see on the jumbotron it wasn't a low blow. So technically speaking, under today's rules, once they looked at the jumbotron, the saw wasn't on the cup, and they go and look at the secondary ref looks at the monitor and goes, yes, it was a legal blow. They then will tell him, hey, it's a legal blow. Are you ready to fight or not? I gotta pee. If I just go pee, nope, fight's over then. Fight's done. They wouldn't have gave him the 5 minutes. But back then, the rules were gotta give him the 5 minutes. They gave him the 5 minutes. They wave him out. Same thing happens with Matt. I knee him in the bladder. That's my aiming spot. So he is getting overwhelmed. Smart fighter. A perceived low blow. He's getting overwhelmed. He needs a second to get composure so he can get himself back in the fight. He looks at the ref as like low blow. Mario Yamazaki was in a bad position. Didn't see it. So I keep going. Then they do the replays after and like, oh, you're right. It wasn't a low blow. It wasn't his cup. It was in his bladder and it caused him damage, but he wanted to get his space. And then that's how we get to, I hit him. His eyes roll up the back of his head. And I'm like, we're out. Fight's out. So when I fought Holman the first time, the rule change now is the cup is the area. The cup is there, not the belt. So you get inside leg kick, outside leg kick. As long as you don't hit the cup, you're legal. So that's got to stay away from the groin. That's it. Male and female, both fighters, stay away from the groin. Everything else is good. Kidneys, bladder, liver, all that's totally legal. Go into the Matt Hughes fight part 2. I roll him up, bang, he's out. I'm hitting him, and you see me looking at Mario. You stop this fight. His eyes are rolled up. If I keep hitting this guy, I'm going to kill him because he's unconscious. It's Matt fucking Hughes.
Yeah.
You hit him hard enough to kill him.
Any chances on that guy, do you?
You're going to hit him hard enough to wake him up. And so I hit him hard enough, he woke up. I'm like, this fight's over. Oh, shit, the fight's not over. We're still in the fight. So obviously now I want to scramble, and I get choked again. After that fight, all of a sudden now they have the flash knockout rule. So if that fight happens again under today's rules, I win that fight right away. It's a flash knockout.
That would have been finished, yeah.
But back then, the way the rules were structured, there was no flash knockout. You continued to fight. You let him go. You give him a chance to see what happens. So I lose that fight. So now I'm 0-2 against Matt. And that is the reality of it. I am responsible. My fight's responsible for 2 minor, super minor rule changes, but significant rule changes. And as a result, it's changed the way the fights are handled later. So I got flash knocked out by Sarah and by Josh Koscheck. UFC 101 and UFC 109. Both those guys flash knocked out. So I jump up. I got Josh Rosenthal as my ref and one of them. I forget which one. I get up and I am yelling at him. I am going to fucking kill him because he had stopped the fight. You better not see me at the bar because I'm going to fucking stab you. Like, I am yelling at him in the cage, and I'm telling him, I am going to fucking kill you. I don't give a shit. You're a bad referee. You're a piece of shit. You're a motherfucker. You just screwed me out of money. You've screwed my career. You're going to kick me out of the UFC again, you motherfucker. I look up at the Jumbotron. Oh, yeah, sorry about that, Josh. Good stoppage. Like, oops. So in my head, it's a flash knockout. I hit the ground. I bounce right back up and go, yeah, fuck you, let's go. And he's waving the fight off. When I see the Jumbotron, I limp down to the canvas. My head bounces off the canvas. I sit up. I stand up, and I'm wavering as I'm ready to fight, as I'm trying to fight. He's like, yeah, fight's over. I'm like, yeah, good stoppage. Yeah, you're right. You should have stopped that fight.
Yeah.
I would have got killed. Yeah, good stoppage.
The reason you've still got your brain cells and you can talk to me now. Do you know what I mean?
My head and my hands were not working. They were not working at all. They were not working together. One was doing one thing, and the things were doing another. It was a total mess up. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And before we go, Frank, I just want to ask you this because obviously after your second Matt Hughes fight, there was a confrontation in an elevator with Bruce Buff.
That was years ago. That was way before that.
Oh, was it really?
It was way before. It was years ago. No.
Because I watched the interview with Booker and he said it was after.
It was after the second fight. You're right. It was
after the second fight. Yeah.
Because we were at a WEC or a fight night or something. Small card. It was at the Hard Rock. Let me tell you this. Have you ever been in an elevator with 5 grown men?
Yeah.
5 guys. You've been in an elevator.
Yeah.
How much space is there with 5 grown men in an elevator?
Not a lot at all.
In an elevator going from like the 24th floor, 23rd floor down to the first with no stops. How fast is that?
I mean, I would probably have a good chance against someone who was probably a brilliant Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Do you know what I mean? Because there's not much space. You can maybe throw a sly elbow in at them. Do you know what I mean?
So with all this knowledge, who goes and gets stitches and who goes home?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Like, I didn't go get stitches. My thumb didn't get cut. I didn't bleed all over my $400 silk shirt and have to go to the emergency room. I was in slippers, flip-flops. What do you got? Thongs or whatever you guys call them? And
they call them thongs, yeah.
And I'm basically dressed the way I'm dressed right now. I had a t-shirt and shorts on. And then I'm like, he throws a punch, I throw up another punch, and we fucking get into our altercation.
How did that start? Because Bruce Buffer just comes across as the nicest guy ever.
There is nobody that loves Bruce Buffer more than Bruce Buffer. Just ask him.
Ah, right. Okay. Got you.
So I am literally talking to Dana. It was Dana Tom, his bodyguard at the time, who's the ex-sheriff in Las Vegas. Mike Goldberg, Bruce Buffer, Frank Trigg. That's the five. That's the five in the elevator. I was at Goldberg's room. We come down. Buffer gets on the elevator with us. We go down 2 flights, whatever. Dana gets on, and then we're going down. And I'm talking to Dana about coming back to the UFC because I've already been out. I'm talking about coming back. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to have you back. And you got a pretty good record, whatever, blah, blah. Let's talk to Joe Sill. I'm like, yeah, but what are you guys going to offer me? Because, I don't know how much I'm worth to you guys because, it's all about selling seats and selling tickets. It's not about how much my value, because, my value is $1 million. Every time I fight, I'm worth $1 million. But, what's my actual value? Dana's about ready to give me a number. Bruce, literally, no exaggeration, gets down on one knee in the elevator, grabs Dana's hand, and goes, wow, boss, that's a great watch. Right when Dana's about to start talking money. So I never do this to an on-air. Don't ever do this at home, ladies and gentlemen. Don't ever do this. This is not good. I fucking chopped Bruce in the throat as hard as I could when he was on it. I was like, oh, whack. I fucking chopped him dead in the throat. This is the voice of the octagon. He makes his money off his voice. I chopped him in the throat. He's mad, rightfully so. He gets up. Don't you fucking chop a guy in the throat. He uses his voice. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to. I go back to Dana, and he fucking pushes me. I turn around. He punches me, so I punch him back. He punches me again. I punch him back. He punches me again, and I have a Swatch watch with a metal brace watch, right? So it's not like a rubber brace like this one. It's a metal, right? So he goes to punch me, and I catch it on my hip. Like I just catch his punch. And as he punches, he slides down, and my watch catches his thumb and tears it back from the knuckle, tears it back from the cuticle back to the knuckle. Click, flips it open. And so he's bleeding all over the place. I'm like, you dummy. He's like, yeah, but Dana's Caesar, he's got no punk for the. I'm like, Dana doesn't give a shit. Dana doesn't care. You're a voice, man. Like, stop. Who cares? Like, you don't need to be tough to yell. Like, it's not that hard. It's fucking crazy. And then it became, and that was the number one. The funny thing is that 2 days later, honestly, no bullshit. 2 days later, totally forgot about it. Didn't care. I'm not trying to get hold of Joe Silva. I'm trying to get hold of Sean Shelby. I'm trying to get up back in the UFC. Takes me a while. Takes me a while after that to get back in here. Takes a long while. So I totally forget about it. Bruce writes his book, his tell-all book of all the parties, all the stuff he's hanging out with. And chapter 13, chapter 11, whatever it is in his book, is this story that he puts out there. And how he rear naked chokes me and says, I'm not Matt Hughes, bitch, whatever, blah, blah. So I very much don't give a shit. I honestly don't care. It doesn't matter. So everyone's calling me now to talk about this thing. It's not my book, talk to Bruce. It's not my book, talk to Bruce. Me talking about this only promotes his book, which makes him money, makes me no money. I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna
I absolutely get you.
So they called, my wife is also, so traditionally how people book me for like interviews like this, they have to go through Jill. Like they have to, because she has my calendars. Like she controls my entire calendar. She controls all my appearances. She writes all my contracts. Well, my lawyer and her control the contracts and do all this. I have nothing to do with it. So Fight Lore is trying to get a hold of me for this thing, and I just keep blowing them off. Like I don't recognize the number, and I don't recognize the number. Leaving this long ass voicemail. Like I don't care. They finally somehow get a hold of my wife. She's like, "You got to do this thing for Fight Lore." I'm like, "Why? Like I don't care. It does not make me any money. They're gonna come in here and be intrusive and talk about some fight that really doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't really. And to be honest with you, the way I don't have Fight Pass. So I didn't see it. I don't see what the final result is. So I'm only going off the book. I go, the reality of it is that the book is all bullshit. It's all just Bruce trying to sell this thing. So because the way that he sells his book is that this one chapter in it is basically embellished, means the whole book is embellished. So I don't really care. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm over it because to me, it was a non-event. It was really the important part of that is that Dana White, the president of the UFC, wanted me back in the UFC. That's my takeaway. Bruce's takeaway is I fought Frank Trigg in the elevator, and I'm the toughest, I'm the toughest commentator and toughest voice of the octagon ever. I'm like, that's not the takeaway, man. Like, none of that. The takeaway is like, don't interrupt somebody in the middle talking about money. That's the takeaway you should have got.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I wanted to ask you about that, Frank, because, when I watched that interview, I was like, listen, I've trained a little bit, and I know guys who do, they do it. Do you know what I mean? I play at these guys do it, right? Yeah. Bruce obviously plays at it. You guys do it. You know what I mean? There would be fucking no chance I would beat the guys who I know who do it. I wouldn't even bother trying to fucking confront them. Do you know what I mean? Which is, I thought I need to weigh the other side of this story. Do you know what I mean? This is
and that's the thing. To me, it literally is a non-event. It's something that really doesn't matter to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
To a lot of people, it's the most significant thing that's ever happened to them. Like, honestly, that's the most significant thing. I'm like, it's not even a thing. Like, I don't even care. Like, honestly, if you didn't ask me about it, I wouldn't have brought it up, and I wouldn't even thought about it. Like, it wouldn't have even been a conversation. Like, I don't. Oh yeah, let's talk about the elevator thing. Like, I don't. People hit me up all the time. Talk about the elevator thing. I want to like watch Fight Lore, read Bruce's book. Like, I didn't want to. I didn't even talk about it. Like, I don't even care.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the only time I talk about it is when somebody brings it up in an interview. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't. I've had people at my house watching fights. Like, there's always that one guy. The one guy is a friend of a friend that somehow gets invited over, and he's there, and obviously he wants to start talking about this thing. He's like, "Oh yeah, so tell me about the elevator fight thing." And I'm like, Fight Lore.
So, in other words, I've been that guy, Frank.
But it's like, I don't really care. Like, in an interview situation, it makes sense. Like, it's topical. Like, this is something you want to talk about. Like, some random stranger, I'm just like, dude, I don't really care. Hit me up on my Instagram, like on my Instagram, my Twitter. They'll hit me up. But I don't. Fight Lore, it's on Fight Pass. You can watch the episode or read Bruce's book. There's nothing else to say. It doesn't matter because it doesn't benefit me. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't help me. It doesn't do anything. It does nothing.
I'm just a nosy bastard, and I wanted to know basically.
So, but believe me, if this was reversed, 100% would ask you, like 100%.
Yeah,
I'm a nosy asshole too. Like, I want to find out.
Frank, can I just say this has been the easiest interview I have ever done. I'm not going to lie, because you're just an articulate man. You're an MMA legend. And before we do go, your last fight was in Bama before you retired.
You know what?
That's how we both know Matt Bourne. He's a mutual friend of ours, and he's a great guy. And what made you sort of? I did watch the fight, the last fight that you had. It was against
Jamal.
Yeah. And he seemed to have the reach on you, I think. And you were sort of trying to get in close. He kept using the jab.
Yep.
After that fight, what was going through your head? Because obviously that was your last fight in your MMA career. What was going through your head at the time? Were you thinking, you know what, I don't really need this shit anymore? Was that
no? So the whole training camp, I had like a 3-week training camp, and I could barely train. Really? I had a couple different infections in different cuts got infected, and I just couldn't. Like, I had to be careful. Like, you couldn't kick me because I had one cut on my leg, and it was infected, and so I couldn't train jiu-jitsu. Like, so all that, but also on top of all that's just an excuse. The reality of it is that after the Matt Hughes 2 fight, I honestly never wanted to fight again. I put so much heart and soul into the second fight to get ready for him. Diet, nutrition, strength and conditioning, sleeping right, no drinking, getting a psychologist, doing everything you could possibly do, and to still lose that fight. I never wanted to fight again. Like, every fight after the second Matt Hughes fight, I really was only showing up because I realized I can train my ass off and put heart and soul into it, and I'm still going to lose. I might as well just show up and collect a paycheck. So literally every fight after that, I was just collecting a paycheck, just trying to get paid because I had no other way to make money. And at the end of the Wallhead fight, I've never officially retired. I just stopped taking fights. People still call me now for fights, especially this new bare knuckle boxing garbage that's out there. They call me all the time.
Valor, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, look, this is great. I have a number, but you can't pay me that number. You don't have it in your budget. So for me to get the fight for you, it's a huge number that you can't pay me, so I'd have no interest in it because I make so much more money doing other things.
Yeah.
I stepped away because after the Jim Wallhead fight, after I got my check, I still owed $2,500 for my training camp, my corners, my doctors, my managers. So I made no money. I lost money on that fight.
Wow.
So I was like, you know what? I need to make a life change. I was in Hawaii doing a seminar, and I went to go watch a buddy of mine, TJ Thompson, who was the promoter for Icon, where I fought Robbie Lawler and Jason Miller for the championship belts. He's a stunt guy, and he was robbing a bank on Hawaii 5-0 in season 3. And he was like, "Do you want to come watch?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, come watch." The stunt coordinator came down, started talking to me. He's a fight fan. He asked me if I wanted to work. This was a Tuesday. Asked me if I wanted to work on the following Friday. I went on the following Friday, thinking I was going to be an extra because I loved the show. I was like, "Yeah, I'll be an extra. I'll be background. It'll be cool." I had a stunt. I stumbled down a couple flight of stairs. Got to hang out with Alex O'Loughlin. Got to hang out with Scotty Kahn. Got to hang out with Grace Kim and Daniel Day Kim. Grace Park. It was amazing, amazing day. Got that check 2 weeks later. It was like, let me do the math, and I'm bad at math. Let me do the math. If I'm in a training camp and I'm like, oh yeah, this is where I'm at. I am moving into acting and stunt work because I make so much more money. The money was coming in at the time to the topper level, but I passed my prime. So I'm not going to be the top level making good money. So I'm like, okay, let me get out of this. So I moved into stunt work and acting full time, and I still take the phone calls when they call me, like, "Hey, do you want to fight? Would you do this? Would you do that?" Like, yeah, I'm not interested. And because you get down to like, hey, I'm booked on 5-0, I'm booked on NCSLA, and I'm booked on SEAL Team in the next 3 weeks. These are the days I have. In these next 3 weeks, I'll make this amount of money. For me to give that up, which is not only going to stunt my career now, because if you give up jobs, the stunt creators tend not to call you back later for this other gig.
If you take your foot off the gas, that's it. Do you know what I mean?
You've got to pay me. You got to pay me this amount to make it worth my while. Otherwise, this is not worth it at all. They're like, oh, we thought maybe 1/8 of that. Yeah, well, then you thought wrong. I'm not your guy. And then that was the other conversation. Like, you just don't have the money. So for me to continue to fight 9 years ago now, 10 years ago now, it was like you had to pay me such an exorbitant amount of money to make it worth it. Because I make more money doing this. I just make more money doing this. It's just the way it is. It's the economy of scale. I just make more money at it. I work all the time. I'm not a waiter or waitress trying to be an actor. I'm a working actor. I pay my bills acting and doing stunt work. I pay my bills in entertainment. Now every year, and the reason why I say acting and stunt work, because every year it switches, right? I get paid more as an actor, but I get less gigs as an actor. I get more work as a stunt guy. I'm very much because we do our taxes usually April 15th. Now it's July 15th because of COVID. But come that December 31st, when everything's done, I have my bookkeeper give me my breakdown of where I made all my money, and I look at it. And wherever I made the most amount of money for the year, that's what I am for the next year. So if I made more money acting, I'm an actor that does stunts. If I made more money doing stunts, I'm a stunt guy that does acting. And that's how wherever I make my money is where I'm at. So this last year was 19. I made more money doing stunts than acting, but I was on track this year. I was co-starred in 2 major movies. I had 2 smalls that I was the star. I had 2 small budget movies where I was the star, 2 co-stars, a major budget, and had a reoccurring on a huge sequence sequel I was going through that have all been canceled because of COVID. Like, this is the year to be an actor, and it all fucking went away.
Don't get me started on that. Because that's my trade. I'm a comedian, you know what I mean? And I've had so many gigs cancelled. It just drives me mad. Before we go, Frank, listen, you're just such a great guy. I just feel the need to one more question before we go. Yeah. I've never asked an MMA fighter this before, but when you were saying about your training camps and stuff like that, and you were like, "Oh, I couldn't have a drink," because I love a beer, you see. Yeah. And what is the when you're in a training camp, do you just not drink at all? Are you just completely clean?
No, I would drink all the way up until 3 weeks before the training camp. So
really?
I would cut things out of my diet, but I still would drink. So
really?
12 weeks, 8 weeks, you have these things. And on these certain days, the last times you can have these things. Now there's other guys like, no, I don't drink at all during training camp. Everyone's got their own way of approaching it.
Yeah.
But I would adjust things out of my diet. That would, as I would get down to it, and I would have a beer or 2 every day, every night, a glass of wine every day, every night. And then all of a sudden, as I got that 3 weeks before the fight, Like, that's it, done. Alcohol's out. I'm out. It's just out of it. But also, I had a lot of weight. I would have to diet down to 185. So I'd be like 195, 200. Being a training camp, would diet down to 185, and then I'd be at 185 when I would get on the plane to go to the week before the fight, to go to the fight, and I would have to dehydrate 15 pounds. So I'd have to cut alcohol out because alcohol dehydrates you, and then you have to rehydrate to get it out of your system, and that was a negative effect for me to have to get the weight off. So I would stop drinking 3 weeks out. But I know a lot of fighters in my day that would drink all the way through because they didn't have that much problems with cutting weight. They would drink all the way through.
Well, Evan Tanner was one, wasn't he? I mean, Evan Tanner used to like a beer. Do you know what I mean? Like
a beer. He'd like a fifth of tequila. He'd be like the week before the fight, like 4 days before the fight, he's drinking tequila, like having a bottle by himself. I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, yeah, this is how I drink. And he was that good. So everybody's different. Don't let anybody, especially you as a comedian, you know this for sure. Don't let anybody tell you this is the process. This is the only way it can be done. Is this way? Like, no. You know, Kevin James has 11 canceled shows, and every year has a new show on TV. Like before he got King of Queens, he had 11 shows that didn't go. You know, this is not a guy that walked in as like went from stand-up rated, boom. Dave Chappelle had a lot of shit not go right. You know, if you hang out with comedians, you know, Russell Peters is a friend of mine. I grew up in Eddie Murphy because I'm from New York. He's from New York, and I used to see him running around all the time. Charlie Murphy, same thing. I've seen these guys, and not one of them, Joe Rogan included, not one of them have the same process. No. Everybody's got a different process. So it's the same thing with everything in life. There's not one way to do anything. Most people, like GSP, didn't lift weights. He did all gymnastics, right? Yeah. For a lot of guys, that doesn't work. It doesn't. Their body can't handle it. Their body will fall apart. They have to lift weights. But I know other guys, like, I can't lift like barbells. I can't lift iron weight. I have to use bands because the way my joints are fucked up, the way my body's fucked up. And I can't do anything overhead. I can't do anything this. I can't do any of that because of my body. So everything is a different process. My process was I would cut cheese out and dairy out early in the training camp. Like all dairy get cut out early in the training camp. But I still have eggs and all that stuff. And then I would cut down to where I was eating 25 servings a day of fruits and vegetables and would have just enough protein per day to keep my body functioning. Like I would measure it out to the point where I need this much protein for the day because of this output I put out and what I did lifting wise and cardio wise and whatever it was. This amount of protein I have, and that's it. And everything else was salads. And I'd cut back on my carbs until I would have like a half a cup of rice at the end of the day after my last practice with dinner. I'd cut back on my shakes and I'd cut down. All of a sudden 3 weeks out, like more alcohol, and then that's what I would do. But everyone's different. Everyone's different. That was my process. And that's not the process for most people, or it is the process. Just everyone's different. Just that's how I did it.
It is funny though, because I mean, I've been on a diet recently. I've lost a little bit of weight, and I've actually like still added. I mean, I only drink on a weekend. That's a rule to me. And okay. So like what I'll do is I'll cut my calories, and I'll sort of go, well, I'm only eating this amount of calories, and then I'll drink alcohol. But I think the red wine, and I'm pissed, and I'm going, actually, this isn't bad because it's cheaper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So my dad has this thing. I told you, my dad lives down in Mexico, and he comes up a couple times a year, whatever. But he's like, I only drink on odd days. So if the day ends in 31 and starts with 1, I get to drink 2 days in a row, but otherwise I don't drink on the odd days. Like, why do you do that? He goes, so it keeps my weight down. I'm like, really? And he's lost weight, and that's his process. For me, it doesn't work because if I do that, I just drink twice as much because I missed it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having 1 pint, I might have 7 pints because I didn't drink yesterday, and I'm not drinking tomorrow, so we have 7 pints now. Like, so it's like everyone's got their own little different way of going about it. Mine is that I drink dark and stormies, which are rum and ginger beer. But I'm only allowed to have one. My wife is like, no, you already had one. You can't have another one.
I like a whiskey and ginger. It's a beautiful drink, that. Because
the ginger has so much sugar in it, it like triples the caloric intake. So now you have to go back to straight. So you're drinking straight rum or straight vodka or straight tequila. All of a sudden you're like, that one little drink all of a sudden lasts you a couple hours. Like, why does it take me so? Oh, because straight. Yeah, it's a little while. Okay, all right. Then you realize like you start taking the sugar out of your coffee. I don't drink a pot of coffee anymore because I'm not putting all that creamer in it. I'm just like having black coffee. You're like,
I have black coffee now.
Half a cup. Coffee. I'm good. I've got enough. I'm good. Like, yeah. So I gotta. Before I let you go, I want to tell you guys a story because I think you'll enjoy this.
Yeah. Go on.
I'm ever in Dublin. It's St. Paddy's Day week because you know how the Irish like to celebrate. It's not St. Paddy's Day. It's a week. So I'm out there with my brother. We're having an awesome time. Just got off the plane. Go rate the hotel. We're staying at Temple Bar Hotel on Temple Bar. We go check in. We walk out and go across the street. I forget the name of the bar. There's a bar right across the street. We go in there for a couple drinks. We leave. We go down the way. We go to this other place, and this guy's got this what do you guys call it? We call it pair boy hat. I'm not sure what you guys call it. Like a hat with right. It's got red hair attached to it, right? Right.
Yeah.
So but it looks real. So I think it's like his red hair, right? And so we're talking to him, whatever. I have a 20-minute conversation with him. Now my brother speaks 4 languages. He's lived overseas for the last 20 years. He works for the U.S. government. He's a diplomat, so he's always stationed overseas, different cultures. And I'm having a full-on conversation with this guy. And I turn to my brother 20 minutes into it. I go, I got to be completely honest. I have no fucking clue what this guy is talking about. I don't know one word. I don't understand one thing what he said. I am completely lost in what's going on. And the guy turns and talks to my brother because he doesn't, because I'm talking really fast. You know, because my brothers and I, we have a do you have brothers and sisters?
But my brother's 16. I was 18 when there's a huge age gap.
So my brothers and I are really close in age, but when we get together, we've been around each other for our whole lives, so we understand where the conversation is going. So we shorten our words and we speak really fast. So
yeah.
Together, people lose what we're talking about. So like our wives our wives will be together, and he and I will have a conversation. And they're both like, what the hell are you guys talking about? We don't. I'm like, oh, sorry. So I'm talking to my brother. The guy's like, what are you talking about? Like, the guy's not talking to my brother. Like, what did he say? And my brother had to explain to him. I don't understand what he's talking about. He goes, oh, yeah. Okay, so let me slow it down and talk a little bit better. He goes, I'm from Cornwall. We speak the worst. I was like, you guys are very good language. How do you speak with marbles in your mouth and you don't really talk? You just like kind of spit it out. Like, what the hell? He's like, oh, I know. It took me so the guy sat with us for like 3 hours and would finally at the end of 3 hours, he's back to his normal speech pattern. I was like, now I get it. I had lost my ear for understanding English.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I get confused, I either hit up Matt Bourne or Jude Samuel. I'll hit up Jude and be like, this guy said this. What does this mean? I'm not sure what this means. He's like, oh, what he's trying to say is, and they have to explain it to me. I'm like, dude, it's so hard. It's
interesting because I'm interviewing a lot of obviously American fighters since I've started this podcast, and I'm from North England, and a lot of my friends, you would hear them speak, and I'm trying to be as articulate as I possibly can with regards to how I speak, so people can understand what I'm saying. But you know, you hear people speak from, Newcastle, you'd be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Do you know what I mean? So I'm glad you understood everything.
Honestly, our biggest experience with your language is Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Rock and Roll. That's our inlay. And so all of a sudden you're like northern fags and southern faggots and northern queers, like that's their whole bit when in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Like, I don't even understand it. And you talk to Mark Goddard, he's like, yeah, that's a real thing. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess so, because we have it here. We just assume it's just us, that no other country does it. We as if you're in the Pacific Northwest, you make fun of people that are in the South, and if you're in the Atlantic, you make fun of people in the Midwest. Like that's just how it is, because you speak weird. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? I don't have an accent. You have an accent.
It's north and south in England, because my wife is from, my fiance, she's from Essex, so she's from the other end of the country. I'm from north.
Very posh up there. Posh in Essex.
Sorry,
it's very posh in Essex.
I don't know, because where we used to live in Dagenham, you couldn't go to the shops at 8 p.m. on the evening. It was rough. We're safer up north, mate. That's why and the houses are cheaper. That's why we live here. But it is funny when our families get together, because my family's all very much like, big drinkers. Do you know what I mean? We've had loads of fights and stuff, brawls, like, just up for a good time. Whereas their family are more sort of like, a bit standoffish, like,
very proper. We don't like, shut up.
Yeah. Like, my family's confrontation, her family's strongly worded email. Do you know what I mean?
Did you send out that email? Yes, I sent that email. I let him know we're both first. I let him know. Fuck.
Oh, listen, Frank, this has been an absolute blast, and it's probably been the easiest interview I've ever done. I've basically just sat and had a laugh with a mate who I haven't even met before. So this has been. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Yeah.
And like I say, the absolute MMA legend and just an all-around great guy. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Truly my pleasure. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Bless you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.